Welcome to the meeting of the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission, May 10th, 2023. The meeting notice was posted according to the requirements of Open Meeting Act. The meeting will come to order. I got a little premature. You had two raps. Please call the roll.
First Congressional District Commissioner Seth Phillips.
Here.
Second Congressional District Commissioner Kevin Potter.
Here.
Third Congressional District Commissioner Charles Ortega.
Here.
Fourth Congressional District Commissioner Lindy Ritz.
Here.
Fifth Congressional District Commissioner Blake Rainey.
Here.
At-large Commissioner Jim Putnam.
Here.
At-large Commissioner Jerry Hunter.
Here.
Thank you.
Next order of business is approval of the meeting minutes. A draft of the minutes of April 10th, 2023 special commission meeting has been sent to you. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? If not, I will accept motions to approve.
So moved.
Second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips.
Abstain.
Commissioner Potter.
Aye.
Commissioner Ortega.
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey.
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam.
Abstain.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thank you.
The next order of business is Director's Report. Director Arties.
Morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Good to see that we have the whole band back together today. Feels a little claustrophobic in here with everybody. No, I'm kidding. I apologize for the stuffiness. The Oklahoma allergies have gotten a hold of me. But it's been a good month. It's been a busy month, and I know we're trying to get some of the pictures up on the screen. But we started off on April 11th with I happened to be touring with Congressman Lucas of the AAR facility. So during the redistricting process, which happens every decade, Congressman Lucas now has the Will Rogers World Airport campus in his congressional district, Congressional District 3, which is it's a big district out there in northwestern Oklahoma. And so he was coming in to take a look at AAR and the what they have to offer. And I know we've talked about AAR, and they're good friends of ours. And shortly after the AAR visit, he was moving over to the Mike Monroney Aeronautical Center and visiting with them. And so just trying to get his feet under him. Obviously, he knows about aviation aerospace. He's a supporter of it. But now he has this new thing in his district, and he wanted to go take a look at it. So a good meeting there with him and his staff and the folks from AAR. At the last meeting, I talked to you about some of the tours we were setting up with a bond rating company in partnership with State Treasurer Todd Russ. We had one, so you know there's 3 bond rating companies out there. We had one of those meetings prior to the April meeting, and we had 2 post-April meeting of the commission, April 11th and 13th. We met with, or we toured with Moody's and Fitch and took them to the 137th and Boeing and Tinker Air Force Base and kind of got them interested in what Oklahoma has to offer and how diversified our economy is, because obviously anybody from outside Oklahoma and even some of those from inside Oklahoma, you know, they see us an oil and gas state and an agriculture state. They don't know about our manufacturing presence in aviation aerospace. So trying to help with the ratings of the bonds here that we offer as the state of Oklahoma. Followed that up, we went down to the Fort Worth FAA Airports District office on April 14th and met with Glenn Bowles, our ADO manager, and Femi Adeyu, our assistant ADO manager, and talked to them about our airport projects and some of the things that we're trying to flesh out with all the money coming into the airport system here in Oklahoma. On April 26th, I had the pleasure of being invited by Jim Dunlap and Pat Hall to film a Inside the Issues taping, and I believe that showed on 2 Sundays ago on Cox Communications, filmed at UCO using their filming students, and just talked about aviation aerospace, sitting there next to Senator John Hast and talking about his role as the Aeronautics and Transportation Committee Chairman, as well as the Transportation Subcommittee Appropriations and Budget Chairman as well. And so just talking about aviation aerospace, and again trying to share the message of what this industry can do for the state of Oklahoma and hopefully get a little more people educated about what the industry has to offer. On April 27th, we were able to have our art contest award ceremony at the Will Rogers World Airport up there in the, I'll call it the observation deck. That's not the appropriate term, but that's what I remembered as a kid, for those of you that were around the Will Rogers days. In the previous terminal that had the observation deck. If you haven't gone to see the new observation deck at Will Rogers World Airport, I would highly encourage you to go take a look at it. Pretty cool place. Commissioner Rainey was there with us that day, and had 11 of the 12 winners in attendance, which I think may have been our best attendance ever for an art contest award ceremony. So kids were there, their teachers were there, their parents were there, and it was a good opportunity to get those kids enthusiastic about aviation aerospace careers, specifically on the art side. And we know how much art plays into aviation aerospace, specifically on the design side. You look at how aviation aircraft are designed today, and it's very much an artistic element to it. And then last but not least, on April 28th, I attended the OU Aviation Advisory Board with our chairwoman, Lindy Ritz, and heard about all the amazing things that the OU Aviation program is doing currently and what they have coming up with some of their expansions and fleet replacements. So really good opportunity there to visit with the OU friends and seeing what they have to do. So with that being said, I will stand for any questions. All right.
All right, item 5.
Thank you.
You stay up.
Oh, I'm staying up, that's right. So item 5, MRO Americas Conference. On April 18th through the 20th, Sandra Shelton and I represented the agency at the Oklahoma booth at MRO Americas. This is one of the bigger, more important trade shows that we attend, obviously because our business in Oklahoma is mostly MRO. But it was very well attended. I heard numbers from 50 to 75 to even a 90% traffic increase over the MRO America show we had in Dallas last year. Of course, that was their first MRO show back from the pandemic, and so this was the second one. The neat thing about this year was, being that Oklahoma is the MRO capital of the world, they actually had a whole MRO landing section of the conference center. And so you looked on the map, and they had the UAS and AAM section, they had the primes, so the Boeings, the Airbus section, and then they had the Oklahoma landing. And that was pretty neat. That's something that Commerce had been working on for a couple of years now, getting a majority of the Oklahoma MRO companies that attend, not in our booth as an Oklahoma company, but attended as their own booth in that section. And so there was probably, I don't know, 150 to 200 foot long, but maybe about a 40 or 50 foot wide stretch of nothing but Oklahoma companies. And so pretty amazing. Those that were in the booth, we had 8 companies in the booth: AeroCore X, Astra Manufacturing, Avtrac, Decomp Composites, Dow Aero, Mint Turbines, Ross Group, Tubisex, Durant, and Salem Tube. And then we had 8 other community and or just general partners: the AEP, the electric provider, Ardmore, Lawton, Oklahoma City, both the chamber and the airport, Tulsa, Weatherford, Manufacturing Alliance, of course, the Aeronautics Commission. It was a great show. Had probably 24 meetings with various companies that were interested in coming to Oklahoma or looking to maybe partner with one of our existing businesses that were there at the booth. So great opportunity, and probably one of the best MRO shows that I have ever attended. With that being said, I will stand for any questions.
You get to stay up again.
And
Item 6.
stay standing. Item number 6, we have the legislative congressional regulatory update. As Commissioner Ortega knows all too well, we are in the midst of a rather interesting and aggressive legislative session. It's kicked off probably the fastest we'd ever seen it kicked off earlier in the session, and it seems like that pace just never stopped. Obviously, you've seen some of the news and some of the discussions and debates that are ongoing, whether it's the education, the mega project, some of the other economic development incentives that are being discussed, and I won't go into too many details there, but there are some things happening at the Capitol, some fray, and we're trying to stay above that fray. Unfortunately, none of our bills have been caught up in the fracas, so to speak. As you know, we have 4 main initiatives this year. So our first initiative, which was Senate Bill 773, that's the Advanced Mobility Pilot Program language and some of the things that we're looking to change there. Title was struck on that bill. As we know, that's a procedural move to kind of kick it down the road a little bit to give it some more negotiations. I think the language was good. I think this merely got caught up in some of the budgetary discussions, since there might be a thought that there's a budget element to this bill. And so this will go to conference committee. We're working on trying to help find the conferees for this effort right now. And hopefully we can get a conference committee put together. We can get everybody to agree on the language, restore title, and then have it heard back on the House and the Senate floor, get passed, and then have the governor sign it. Senate Bill 782, which we've talked about, was the name change for the agency. I'm happy to report that this made it off the House and Senate floor and was signed by the governor on April 28th. So effective November 1st, we will now be the Oklahoma Department of Aerospace and Aeronautics, and obviously very proud of that. Very thankful to our author, Senator Racino, and Representative Kyle Hilbert for shepherding that bill through the process, and thankful for the governor for signing that bill, particularly on that day, given some of the things that were going on. Senate Bill 930 was our aviation aerospace education bill. It started the Aerospace program, SPACE being the acronym of Student Pathways for Aerospace Careers and Education. That bill also made it through and was signed by the governor on May 5th, so last Friday. Very appreciative of that. Looking to be able to kick that off, and of course that will go into effect on November 1st as well. Just helping to increase our aviation aerospace educational presence and kind of leapfrog and launch into space what Paula is already doing with AOPA and Choose Aerospace. And then last but not least, we have Senate Bill 942, which is the Engine Test Cell Program. This is a new program the legislature is putting at the Aeronautics Commission. I'm going to have to get used to the new name at some point in time. But the Oklahoma Aircraft Engine Testing Development Grant Program, the goal there is to help joint venture partnership between American Airlines, Lufthansa Technik, and BizJet in Tulsa to give them some state funding to help with their new engine test cell development that they're trying to stand up at the Tulsa airport. That bill had some changes between the Senate and the House version. So the House made some amendments. Now it has to go back to the Senate. I believe Senate is looking to accept those House amendments, and then it has to get passed off the Senate floor. And if that's the case and there are no more amendments and the Senate simply accepts the House amendments, then it will go straight to the governor, which is our hope. Obviously, you know, we are eagerly awaiting any budget agreement that may come here in the next couple of weeks. We know that the legislature has to pass a budget and sine die by the last Friday in May at 5 o'clock, and so we are eagerly awaiting that. And I'm headed to the Capitol right after this meeting to discuss all things aviation aerospace and some of our bills moving through the process. So it's a good time. It's been a good session. It's been a little bit of a hectic session sometimes, but I think at the end of the day, we're 2 out of 4, and I think we might end up, if we're lucky, batting 1,000 by the time we come to the last Friday in May. Fingers crossed. That's all I have, Commissioners. I'll stand for any questions.
Can you elaborate a little bit about that STEM bill, education bill? What's its effect going to be with us?
So the impact of that bill, if you go back and you look at our current statutory language on aviation aerospace education, it refers to things like air age education, which was the terminology back in the 40s when it was first put in statute. We figured it was no one uses air age education anymore. I haven't heard that term actually ever. I had to do the research to figure out what it meant. But it was, that air age education was merely the 1940s term for aviation aerospace education. And so what this is doing is providing us with a updated language to ensure what we already do is in statute, but also give us some more capabilities to go out there and sell AOPA, sell the Choose Aerospace program, and really reflect to ensure that Oklahoma Aeronautics is being seen as that leader in state government for aerospace and aviation education. So this is kind of our stamp, our mark on making sure that we are the go-to organization for aviation aerospace education. I'm hopeful that in years to come, it might lead to extra funding, special funding, grant opportunities to enhance what we're already doing on the aviation aerospace education front. So, you know, this year we're 57 schools, get to 80, maybe 5 years from now, we're 125, 150, who knows? But I think this is the foundational first step to allow us to grow the program. And we didn't put it in the legislation, but I'm still working on it, talking to some scientists, trying to figure out how to clone Paula. Can't figure that one out yet, and I didn't want to put that in the law, but we're working on that.
Thank you.
Great news with all of them.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Item 7, Chris Wadsworth, financial report.
Morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. So starting out with the financial summary document, as of the end of April, the Commission had an ending cash balance of just over $14 million, encumbrances totaling about $7.8 million. Outstanding reimbursements owed to the agency total around $755,000. The amount of remaining expenditures in the airport construction program that could be incurred this fiscal year totals $6.7 million, provided those grants are approved by you all. Leaves us with an expected cash balance after encumbrances and expenses of $1.7 million. As we talked about last month, that's pretty much in line with where we've been historically. Total fiscal year-to-date expenditures during this fiscal year are $6.9 million as of the end of April, and I will note that is up some from previous years. So revenue's coming in higher, but we are turning around and spending that money higher as well on projects. On the revenue document, total statutory revenue collected for the month of April was $1.26 million. So that's our 4th month this fiscal year that we've exceeded $1 million. That's substantial. Total statutory revenue collected through April of this fiscal year is $8.9 million, which compares to $4.4 million last year. So we've now doubled revenue of where we were at the same point last year. And then on the 3-year average revenue, as expected, collected revenue this fiscal year is about $4.5 million more than what our 3-year average is. Of course, that 3-year average just takes into account those COVID years where revenue was historically low. So that's going to be made up with the excess we've had this year. Happy to answer any questions.
Any insight as to why the doubling of the revenue?
Excise tax is up about 112% year over year. Registration fees, I believe, are up about 62, 64% over year. So those are the two biggest. License plates, I think, is up about 20%, but that's a pretty small amount. But excise tax and registration fees are the two main reasons.
Inflation of the cost of an aircraft
That's true, too.
inflates the tax on the aircraft sale.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you.
Just surprised that it would double.
Item 8,
With the economy now,
5-year airport construction program. Nick Young.
it's up 50%.
Morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Here we are seeking to approve the upcoming iteration for fiscal year 2024 to 2028 of the airport construction program. And so obviously as we go through these projects, these are any additions or modifications to the previous 2023 to 2027 program. And if we have any questions, please feel free to stop me and we can talk about any of these as we go through. The first project here is at Ardmore Downtown Executive Airport. This is a project we're seeking to add in the 2028 timeframe as a discretionary project to do their next major rehabilitation of the runway, to include a mill and overlay. Anticipated project cost at $4 million, with the commission share being half of the local match of $200,000. Over at Ardmore Municipal Airport in 2008 timeframe, this is another discretionary project that we're seeking to move forward with. This is to do the next phase of the Taxiway Echo project there to get them a full parallel to their primary runway. This will also support the building out of a facility there to the south as they try to bring in some additional operations, whether it be cargo or other types of folks. And so basically that south taxiway that runs east and west there, Delta, on that far south end where you see that large apron, that will go away to make room for some new development areas so that they can bring in some new tenants. And so this is not only to bridge the gap for what will be missing once that goes away, but also given the length and the approaches that they have there at Ardmore, FAA definitely wants to see a full parallel taxiway for that. Obviously, when you get some of that big iron out there, you don't want to do some back taxiing and those types of things for several different reasons. And so this is something we've been pursuing for a long time. And this is looking to be phase 3. I do anticipate that this might have to be broken out into additional phases on down the road. This is a 50-foot wide taxiway. They May even be looking at some local funds to get that out to 75 feet wide for their future operations that they're looking to bring in. And so while this $7 million is a little bit higher for a discretionary project, it's also quite a bit bigger of a taxiway than we're normally looking to at some of our other projects that we've done in recent history as well. So we do anticipate that that's probably going to have to be a multi-phase project, but since this was the next slot in our discretionary programming that was available, we wanted to go ahead and show that in our plan early so that as that develops, we can start to modify this and see what that picture starts to look like in the coming years. At Bartlesville Municipal Airport, this is an existing project that we already have in the ACP to construct a taxi lane. We're simply seeking to update the commission share to $600,000 to build out that taxi lane as much as possible. This will help facilitate the hangar that we're pursuing out there as well, but also to open up the industrial park development area that Bartlesville, the airport, and their development authority are working to create out there and open up that northeast side of the airport. Total project cost on that's about $1.5 million anticipated, partnering with as much of their FAA funds that are available to get that going, and then obviously basically just taking that as far as it can go, and then start to build out that area to the northeast to develop that out. Next project at Broken Bow Municipal Airport. This is an existing overlay that we have in the ACP in the 2024 timeframe, simply seeking to update the cost from $600,000 to $750,000. We still haven't gone through the design project to really see what that irons out as, but since we were updating the ACP, wanted to go ahead and bump that up just based off of what we've seen at similar projects in recent years. And as we go through that process, we'll obviously start to see what that starts to look out as, but we wanted to update based off of the latest data that we had. At Chattanooga Sky Harbor Airport, this is an existing project to rehabilitate and reconstruct their apron, simply looking to slide this up 1 year. As we talked a little bit about in March, they do have a flight school out there and trying to make sure that we're keeping up the pavement for them so that they don't run into unnecessary issues as they're trying to train up folks down there. Total project cost on this is $400,000 at a normal 95.5 state grant, with the commission share anticipated to be $380,000 on that. Claremore Regional Airport. This is a project we're seeking to add to the ACP in the 2027 timeframe. This will coincide with the project for their taxiway that you'll see in the next slide, but looking to do a runway rehabilitation at this time for their next kind of normal maintenance type of items, make sure they're sealing their cracks and getting the most life out of their pavement based off of our inspections that we've been doing out there. And so total project cost on this anticipated to be $400,000. We're basically looking to utilize the FAA funding that they have available for this, but as we started doing that, we saw that there was probably a little bit of a gap to really get the full runway done during this same time. And again, since they're going to have some items going on with the taxiway, we figured it would be a good time to go ahead and get this done at the same time, close things down one time through, get things done, and get it moving on down the road. So the commission share here, as you can see, is anticipated to be about $75,000, $76,000. And we'll see what that looks like as we see what that gap really starts to appear as they work through that process. The second project out there in the same time frame is the rehabilitation of the parallel taxiway. This is an existing project that we have in the ACP currently. We were previously looking at about a $1.2-ish million project as we started to look at what all this entails. There is some additional items there on that north end that the FAA is going to want us to look at to square up that north connector taxiway. But there are some different landscape elevation issues, some drainage issues in that north end. And so all that will have to be evaluated through the preliminary engineering report process that we're going through, and then obviously through design as well. But wanted to bump that up a little bit because we do anticipate that's going to be a little bit more than what we first thought with that $1.2 million given this scope. And so we just wanted to update that anticipated project cost and move it over to discretionary. So the total project cost anticipated at $2 million with the commission share at half the local match at $100,000. At David J. Perry Airport in Goldsby, Oklahoma, this is not a project that I brought before you in March. They did provide a letter during the public comment period seeking assistance to replace 2 of their T-hangar facilities that were destroyed in a recent tornado. They lost a total of 17 units, and they're looking to replace with the same or similar footprint as best they can, looking at about 19 bays with this layout that we see here. We are recommending programming this in as a standard grant process, or grant program, but I wanted to note that the timeline and that funding and those types of things, as they work through their process on their end, we'll start to see what that starts to shape up like. But their anticipated cost preliminary looks to be about $1.6, $1.8 million. And our share of that, since we were just programming it in, going ahead and programming that in as the 40%, and we'll see how that lands as we go forward.
Question on that.
Yes, sir.
Are we talking open hangars, or are we talking
Closed.
doors?
Doors.
Okay.
Yeah, fully enclosed, all doors, all that good stuff. Yeah.
Any other changes in construction to what was there?
Can you
Well, it got impacted in the tornado. Anything different? I mean, they're building back essentially.
They're essentially building back in that same footprint because, I mean, really where those are located, and it made sense to go ahead and build back there.
But they're not changing any other types of construction along that?
Right.
Okay.
It's just the hangar. There is a little bit of apron that might need to be addressed. You can kind of see it in the picture there for that apron there in the red shaded area. But other than that, I imagine that's kind of the only footprint there that's really going to be affected. They're basically trying to go back in that same spot. At El Reno Regional Airport, this is an existing project to construct a taxi lane for future hangar development that we're seeking to slide back by 3 years. Previously was in 2024, looking about the 2027 timeframe. This is to allow the completion of their terminal building and their hangar projects that they're seeking on the next couple years. We also updated our pricing on that, so we anticipate that the commission share of that to be about $450,000. At Elk City Regional Airport, this is an existing project in the ACP for construction of a taxi lane. We are looking to slide this forward by 1 year and increasing the commission share to $500,000. And this is in support of opening up a hangar development area, but also for the hangar that we're pursuing through the hangar program as well, as they start to build up that side of the airfield. That way they can get their big hangars there on the apron that they have now, and then look to build out behind those to the west. At Enid-Woodring Regional Airport, another existing taxi lane project that we're simply looking to slide forward a year and bringing the commission share to $500,000 total. They have several construction projects going on out there, building their hangar that we recently approved. They have some other local projects going into their apron out there that's multi-use between the military and their transient aircraft, and so they're bursting at the seams and they're ready to start expanding out. And so since they were ready to move forward, we're ready to move forward with them at your blessing. And so we are recommending that we are sliding forward 1 year and increasing the commission share to $500,000. At Guthrie Edmond Regional Airport, we have a couple of projects here. The first one is to acquire land so that we can work on the southwest expansion there. As you can see, there's the green there that will be their parallel taxiway project, and then they are seeking to get some more of that land and be able to get some hangar development and other developments there as they work to build out the terminal building, that apron there that you can see in the pink, and then start to build out to the south of that as they expand the airport out there. So as they're working through the process, they're negotiating for the land, going through that, the appraisal and all those types of things. So once they're ready to move forward, we wanted to add this into the ACP at a 95.5 to be able to assist and get that moving on down the road for a total of $300,000 anticipated on that. Guthrie Edmond Regional is still here. This is a next project that's, if we were able to get that land acquired, that they would look to constructing a taxi lane. This would be contingent as to whether or not they got an ATP, an Airports Terminal Program grant from the FAA over the next few years. If they do, then we'll be able to move forward with this. If not, we'll have to reevaluate and see what our funding looks like. But this, again, would be to open up that area to the south once they start to build that out. Total project cost anticipated about $1.4 million or so. Commission share recommended at $400,000. And the last item here just at Guthrie for their trio of projects that we're discussing. This is simply to update the commission share on their terminal building project that is currently existing up to the $1 million threshold now that we have modified our rules. And also added a couple of pictures of the renderings and the layouts there that we received from their engineers. They're working through that process. So looks like it's shaping up and they're getting ready to pursue a very good looking building out there. At Hefner-Easley Airport in Wagner, Oklahoma, this is a project we're seeking to add to the ACP in the 2028 timeframe. Total project cost anticipated about $1.1 million. We anticipate trying to address this with state apportionment funds. So our share would be half a local match at $55,000. And this will be their next kind of big, fairly major runway rehab out there, as they have several very deep cracks that'll need to be addressed as they go through and do that as well. At Jones Memorial Airport, this is another land acquisition we're recommending to add into the 2024 timeframe. Since the land to the east is potentially available and they're working through the negotiation process with that, we wanted to recommend this to be able to assist them with that at that 95.5 rate as well. As they continue to expand, CTS has continued to expand out there. They do anticipate over the next 5 or 10 years they'll run out of space on that southwest side. It is relatively narrow, so you got a good north-south distance, but their east-west distance could use some work to get away from that, the space over there to get their Part 77 separations, those types of things, and ensure that they're staying out of the clear zone. So they do have some space there to the south, but due to the narrowness, we do anticipate that that's going to fill up over the next 5 to 10 years. I want to make sure that we all know that the land typically doesn't get any cheaper, and since that's on the table and may be a possibility, we want to make sure that we're ready to move whenever they are. At Mid-America Industrial Airport in Pryor, Oklahoma, this is a project that we're suggesting to add in the 2024 timeframe that may be flexible there as they're working through a master planning process right now. So this project, the location and the timeline would be basically at the will of the final report of the master plan, but once that gets done, we wanted to have this programmed so that we're ready to have, we have the funding ready and available to them so that they're ready to move forward. So we don't want to be behind the 8 ball. We do anticipate that this is going to go forward regardless if it's in the 2024 timeframe or a little bit further on. But as we're working to build a couple things out there and address their master plan items with our future projects, we want to make sure that we have the funding available for that so that we don't get ahead of ourselves. So we're recommending that at about a $1 million project cost with a commission share of about $400,000, utilizing as much of their FAA funds as we can through their AIG grants. Second project at Mid-America is their terminal building that we're suggesting to add in the 2028 timeframe. This is kind of a sneak peek of what they had from some of their master planning conversations. This isn't the final rendering or anything, but it gives you an idea of the items that they've been discussing on that terminal area layout there. And so looking at about a $3 million cost with the commission share of $1 million, adding that to the 2028 timeframe, which is our next available slot for our terminal buildings. At Ponca City Regional, this is a apron expansion project. We're just simply looking to slide back 1 year. It'll still stay at that $1.5 million with the commission share at $75,000. This is to give them some time to finish out and get their terminal built. Once that terminal is built, we can roll right into this and get that apron built out for them. At Sallisaw Municipal Airport, this is their construction terminal building that we're just simply looking to increase the commission share to $1 million. I will also note that there was a letter of support that we received for the Sallisaw Airport during the public comment period. It emphasized the utility of the airport for local businesses, and they noted upcoming projects at Sallisaw, such as this, and we have some lighting projects and taxiway projects coming up as well, that these projects are imperative to ensure the city is suited to support the increased demand that they're experiencing from users migrating from the Fort Smith area, and also to support and facilitate upcoming economic development projects that they're working on in the area. So they find this airport vital for the projects they're working on there for the economic development of the city of Sallisaw. At Shawnee Regional Airport, this is a project existing in the ACP for rehabilitation and expansion of the terminal apron. We're just seeking to slide this back 1 year. Obviously, they are also affected by tornadoes here recently, so they are working through that long and arduous process to take stock of where they are and what their needs are moving forward. So obviously, this will be flexible based on that timeline as well, but since this is toward the back of the ACP, we had already planned on moving this back for the competition of the discretionary funding that we saw kind of coming to light. And so we figured it would compete better in that time frame anyway. So we'll reevaluate as we go forward, but we are just looking to slide that back a year. At South Grand Lake, this is a project that we're seeking to add to the ACP in the 2026 timeframe to rehabilitate and extend their runway. This will be about the time for their next rehabilitation phase on their normal maintenance of their asphalt out there. And in addition to that, if they are successful in getting that road to the south moved out of the RPZ and the safety area and all that good stuff, excuse me, out of the safety area and the RPZ. So once they get that land swap done and get that fully moved, they'll be ready to go to their full 5,000 feet. They lack just a couple of feet just to get all the way there based off of what is there currently. And so during this process, that would be the most opportune time to go ahead and knock that out. And thankfully, it won't add a whole lot to the normal rehabilitation project anyway. But we're anticipating that to be about a $500,000 project at a 95.5. Reason we're wanting to go that full 5,000, as I'm sure many of you know, insurance has been on a lot of people to get a certain minimum number of feet on their runway, and so all of the pilots they've been speaking to can't operate out of there, has been needing that 5,000 foot mark.
Question, there's no FAA funds for this one?
On this one, no, because of the, we have a discretionary project in 2025 that's scheduled for this as well. And so there may be, you know, some of their MPE funds, but all of their, anything that they have banked up will be utilized for their discretionary project. At Stigler Regional Airport, this is an existing project to construct the parallel taxiway system. We're simply looking to slide this back a couple years. We're waiting to see some developments, 2, 3, 4 more hangars built locally there. Want to make sure that they have the activity to justify that parallel taxiway system before we start moving forward with that project. So we do anticipate that is happening. They have built some hangars here recently, and are in the process of doing some now. At least it looked that way last time my guys were out at the 5010. So hopefully they're seeing some good movement on that side, and in the next few years we'll get those hangars up, and this will be ready to get back on track. At Stillwater Regional Airport, this is again just updating the commission share to $1 million on their construction of the terminal building out there. Originally they were trying to go in the same spot and kind of build that building out. There were some issues with that the structural engineers found, so they are kind of having to work through that process of where to build a new terminal, what that looks like, because obviously that changed their budgetary concerns a little bit once they got that news back. So they're still working through that process, but so we'll see what that looks like for their timeline and the total project cost, because that may change. But obviously our maximum here would be $1 million regardless, but we wanted to reflect that in the ACP. Got a few here at Tahlequah Municipal Airport. This first one is to rehabilitate their runway in the 2024 timeframe. We had this in there already, but it did also have lights attached to it. We are requesting to move this forward 1 year to get their crack seal and repair, and then add the lights later to a discretionary project for the next big, expensive, runway rehabilitation to be utilized with discretionary funding. You'll see the page for that here in just a moment as well. On this project, I'm looking to do a basic crack repair at $300,000 on a 95.5 proposition. The second item here that we're seeking to add to the ACP in the 2025 timeframe is to construct a new taxi lane and box hangar out there. As we discussed a little bit in March, the project is to facilitate the process of relocating hangars on the west side of the airport over to the east. Many of the hangars are obstructions to the transitional surface over there on the west side, and we are looking to provide an area for tenants to have an option to relocate their existing hangars that are on the west side over to the east, and so providing a spot for them to do so, or to build new as some of those hangars on the west side begin to reach the end of their useful life. I don't have the history of how these came to be, but my presumption is the changing of design standards over time has unfortunately come to a head. And so now that we've recognized the issue, we just want to make sure that we're working to resolve it as we're able, whether that's trying to work with some folks that are existing to give them some incentives to move over to the east to be able to remove that obstruction, or as some of them do start to dilapidate and reach the end of their useful life, provide a new space for people to be able to build and do a ground lease and start to build up that east side rather than the west. Total project cost anticipated about $1 million on that, utilizing as much of their AIG funds as able, and commission share anticipated to be about $500,000 on that. And the third project at Tahlequah, this is the project that we're seeking to add to the ACP in the 2028 timeframe. This is the more major rehabilitation of the runway that will be ready to go here in the next 4 to 5 years after we get that crack seal done. So it's been about 20 years since their last major rehabilitation, so it'll be time to go ahead and get that done so that we can get that, that'll also be a good opportune time to get those lights installed as well. And so we can wrap that into a discretionary project anticipating to be about $4 million. Commission share of half the local match at $200,000. At Tulsa International Airport, this is probably the biggest total project cost I've ever seen on the ACP, but this is to construct their new air traffic control tower and TRACON facility that we all know they've been working towards. And So the total project cost on this is anticipated to be about $74 million. This is just for the construction of the facilities. That's not to mention the reimbursable agreements and those types of things that the airport's going to have to work out with FAA to get all the systems and all those types of things ran in through there. But for the construction of these items, that's about what we're looking at the moment. FAA's share of that, about $40 million. The commission share, $19.6 million, the prep funds that were allocated, and the local share of this, about $14.4 million. We also have CEO Alexis Higgins here. And so, Alexis, would you like to come up?
Morning.
Morning.
I'm sorry to say that the total is actually much higher than this once you add in the FAA costs for equipment. We're looking at about $105 million total for this project. We would not be here today without the support of many stakeholders. We were able to get $7 million as airport money. We have $14 million coming from our city and county. And then we really appreciate the work that Director Arties and Sandra provided us in support of getting the $20 million from the state. We had applied for ARPA funds back when we thought that was going to be the avenue for us, but for the legislature to get creative and find a solution for not just Tulsa, but aviation throughout the state to support us. We've never, as a community, felt more supported than we do today, and that's largely in part due to the work of the folks who sit over here at this table. But I just would like to thank you all officially for supporting this project. I have to tell you, we're in a temporary tower today. That picture at the top, the trailer-looking tower is where we're sitting today. We discovered mold in the tower a few weeks ago, and in order to remediate it, we had to evacuate the tower for hopefully about 10 days, and then they'll be back in it sometime next week. But it's just been a continuous challenge for us, and given the fact that it's one of the oldest towers in the country, it is locally owned, which is why it's unique. Many FAA towers are owned by the FAA, and ours is, we just happened to pay for ours back in the 1950s when we wanted to build a new terminal. In order to move the tower, we had to build it, and that's really what set us up to be in this position today. But we're excited. We're about 50% through on design. Look forward to have construction documents ready to go by the fourth quarter and go out to bid, and hope you all will come to Tulsa when we break ground on this very important project. So thank you.
We look forward to it.
Thanks.
I'm concerned, our share is 19 million, 19.6 million?
Yes, and
That's
that was
a couple times more than our annual budget. How are we going to do this?
that was from the prep funds that were allocated to the project via the legislature.
Okay.
So this is flowing through us to the project.
Okay.
Just like our prep hangar projects as well as our other 5 sites as well. At the Westheimer Airport in Norman, this is just updating the FAA funding levels for the air traffic control tower down there as well. FAA has allocated $10.15 million to that, and so that has modified the total to about 11.3. Our portion of that being half of local match, given the discretionary project. And so with that, our share will change just based off the percentage there, but they were able to get some additional funding from FAA this past year. At Watauga Municipal Airport, we are looking to add a project into the ACP to construct a taxi lane and apron there on the west side. This is to kickstart that development and try to build out some good hangar facilities over there on the west, potentially a new terminal building as well. Those types of things to be able to build that side out. There was a golf course over here that is now closed and has opened up that area for development. And given the constraints on the east side, they're very pinched off between the parallel taxiway and that highway over there to the east. And so in order to build without getting into the building restriction lines and those types of things, really looking to open up that west side and open up the area for much more development than would ever be available there on the east. Total project cost anticipated to be about $1.3 million. Commission share recommended about $500,000 on that. Again, utilizing as much of their FAA funding as they have available. At Weatherford Stafford Airport, this is a project we are seeking to add in the 2026 timeframe to construct a taxi lane. It's to open up development on the northwest side of the airport out there. You'll notice it is quite a bit a ways away from the items there on the south, but right there in the middle, you can see that little road that runs out there. You have an AWA system, so we need to provide a clear way for that. And then, of course, as they work to potentially look to they might look to see if there's another area for that and open up that area for development as well if they're able to find a suitable area for their AWAS system going forward. But either way, we know that they're primed and ready for some expansion, and we want to be able to assist with that. Total project cost, again, about $1.3 million. Commission share somewhere around $620,000. The numbers are a little bit weird because I had to break out percentages and such, and I don't want really weird numbers going in there. So that's all just in there to show that it's high-level estimated cost on that at this point. At Woodward Airports, this is for their existing project to construct the terminal building. Again, this is just to increase our share to $1 million on that project. At William R. Pogue Municipal Airport in Sand Springs, Oklahoma, this is to rehabilitate and reconfigure their taxiway. We're looking to add this to the ACP in the 2028 timeframe. About $2.7 million discretionary project. Our portion, half of the local match, somewhere about that $130,000, $140,000 range. These numbers here were provided to us. So again, as they get passed to us, I like to pass them along based off of what they have for us. But again, sometimes the percentages make it look a little bit weird. So I do my best to try to keep things consistent, but every now and then you can't win them all, I guess. And the last three here are some of our statewide types of projects. The first one being a maintenance package that we're recommending them in the 2027 timeframe of about $1.25 million at a 95.5 proposition. This is for some of our smaller unclassified projects that still get some good use and still have some good life into them and are just ready in their next pavement management cycle to go ahead and get some maintenance done out there, whether it be crack seal, seal coat, those types of things, remarkings, to make sure that those that are still getting used are still safe and ready for folks to use them so that they don't land into any surprises. So looking to proceed with that, I think we've done we'll basically try to get as many airports, 4 or 5 airports, 6 airports that we can knock out. I don't remember how many we did last time with that.
17.
We did 17 with that?
Well, with the FA funds.
Oh, okay. Well, I was trying to think of how many we get to, about 1.25.
Oh, probably about 5 or 6.
Yeah. Just want to make sure I wasn't telling fibs up here. So looking to address as many as we can with that funding, but know that it's necessary so that we don't let those dilapidate and then, of course, get way more expensive to get back into good order from that point forward. We are seeking or recommending to seek another statewide AWAS project in the 2028 timeframe. And so this, just like our last one, anticipated to hit about 7 airports, either replacing old systems or finding holes in the system that may need to be addressed. And so again, looking at about $1.25 million at a 95.5 proposition. We were able to get 7 last time. We did 4 replacements and 3 new. And so we're looking at something about that same rate again. I will say that the ones that we replaced, the newest one that we replaced was built in 1998. And I will say that some of those parts are getting really hard to find as well. So we'll keep looking at the ages and keep in touch with those that are having problems finding parts, and that's what we'll use to try to prioritize as we work through that process again. And of course, looking for holes in the system and filling those as needed as well. And the last item here is for our normal preliminary engineering reports that we do with FAA. This is a 90-10 split between us and FAA. So they provide the 90, we provide the 10, and then we go through with the working through the preliminary engineering reports on our discretionary projects that we're seeking in the 2031, 2032 timeframe. So this is our normal course of business that we typically do every year. And with that, that's all the projects that are either being modified or added. And I recommend approval and certainly stand for any questions.
Comments?
Some of the numbers on here are much, much larger than what we've dealt with in the past, and there are a lot more of them. And that's a little concerning when, okay, this one plus that 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 one. And it's like, all right, I understand there was a special appropriation, but can we get these lined out along a calendar so that we can see that we're not just totally blowing our numbers out of the water? It's concerning.
I'd be happy to provide those in whatever method you want them. I will say that for some of the higher ones, the $74 million, the $10 million at Norman, those types of things, I know that the $7 million in Ardmore is probably the one that is the more standard funding that we're used to. It's a normal discretionary.
I'm talking about the commission's portion of that.
Oh, certainly.
Which
yeah, absolutely.
extends way beyond our budget many, many, many times over. even if you take the one outlier completely out of the picture, you add all these others in there, and it seems to bloat what we've done in past years.
I understand. And I will say that we do have some additional revenues, and as Chris alluded to, we are putting back in as fast as we're getting out.
Well, I understand
But
that. Those
certainly.
additional revenues, I can answer that question as to why those revenues are up so much. It's because inflation is up so much, so the cost of those airplanes that people are buying and selling are much higher, therefore they incur a higher tax. Even though the tax percentage remains the same, if the price of the airplane is no longer 1.7 million, it's now 2.8 million. Obviously, you're collecting tax on 2.8 million now, and that would explain to some extent why your revenues are up. Our budget, our entire economy has gone overboard. But again, I want to make sure that our commitments here are not exceeding our ability on the whole.
Certainly.
Commissioner,
I
just
100% agree.
just to be clear exactly what you're wanting from Nick is you want to see what projects, what the funding sources are against what we think are,
And where it falls on the calendar, so we're not
Year by
on
year.
the annual.
okay.
Right,
You're talking about, because this does go
Thank you.
through 28.
Right.
Yes.
And we'll be
And-
voting
and
on
I
So
understand
24
that.
What, what would be incurred over 24, then what would be incurred? I
this
think that's
much
what
at
Commissioner
25,
Hunter
this
is
much for
saying.
each year. So
Correct.
that I can see where we're falling, what our anticipated revenues are for that year, so that we can see we're not just completely shooting ourselves in the backside.
Certainly.
And then also there'll be some variables, as you talked about, depending on certain information.
And I
coming
get
in.
that. I get that there are variables.
Just
I
for
wanna make
clarification,
sure
what
that
you're
we're
asking.
doing our part in terms of fiduciary duty to make sure that we're not going to cause permanent and lasting damage.
I'd be worried if you didn't, Commissioner.
Again, the Tulsa project, that's just a pass-through money that we're
That's an
getting.
outlier.
And one
Right.
thing that, I know everybody, Alexis didn't allude to this, they can't even see the whole field from the current one. Am I correct in that?
Oh, I don't know how they do it.
I know. They cannot see the entire
Right.
field, and so I'm just sitting there going, I don't know how they do it now.
Right.
So, I mean, that's another,
And there's no question, you cannot oppose that project.
I
Because
agree.
again,
You're right.
state funds have already been advanced, or have been allocated, it's a pass-through.
we're way past that. so.
But that's an outlier. There are all these
Exactly.
others that are in the $1 million range from us that, wow, that's a quarter of our annual budget, or, you know.
What you're asking is, we just need a year by year.
I need a
of
year by
these
year, I
findings.
need
Put it
to
in
see
perspective with what
a
we're
cash flow
getting.
analysis,
Correct.
basically.
That's it.
Director?
That's-
A simple
That should
cash
be
flow
fairly
analysis.
easy.
Yeah, Director?
And I might add something to the conversation here. Let's remember, this is a 5-year airport construction program. None of these dollars are being encumbered or obligated in terms of spending this money. So if we remember, in the airport construction program world, this is a program. This is what we anticipate doing in those years, but there's still a box that has to be checked in that these projects will come before you for approval for the actual grant, just like
that's-
we're doing on item 10. So once we have bids in hand, we will come before you for a grant. What I can say is we have never brought a grant to you. If we are in a situation where we have, a significant outspend or a significant increase in encumbrances over our cash available, then we wouldn't bring a project to you for that, because we don't want to get in the
Even if we'd
position-
approved it?
Even if you'd
in the-
approved it in the construction
program.
program, what we would have to do is we'd have to tell the airport, look, here's our revenue situation, just like we were in COVID. During COVID, we had several situations where a project was in the ACP, but we didn't have the money to go spend on it, so we said, well, we're gonna have to wait until we get the money that comes in. Now, granted, that was back in pre-appropriations days, so that was back when we were simply relying upon our dedicated revenue, our aircraft excise taxes, but now that we're getting regular appropriations, that somewhat changes the game, and we have to rely upon that from a perspective of, okay, here's our base budget that we're going to get every year in addition to what we're going to get on an aircraft excise tax or a registration fee basis. And so that's the construct here that I want everybody to understand, is that what you're approving today is merely a programming document that is saying, here's what we're planning to do in these years. But we still have to come back to you for approval for that grant before any of those monies can actually be encumbered and spent for that particular project. So I want to clarify that yes, we don't want to get in a situation where we're not being responsible fiduciaries to the taxpayer dollar, where we have these different things, these different check boxes. Because that's the situation we were in the early pandemic days, where we had a situation where our cash balance was low. We had a number of projects that were out there and encumbered, and we weren't encumbering new projects because we just didn't have the money available. And so we were waiting, and then the money came. We brought projects to you for approval, and we just went down the course of normal business like we always do. And obviously here we are now in a much better picture, thanks to, as Commissioner Hunter was saying, the economy, but also thanks to what the legislature has been able to provide to us in terms of extra funding for infrastructure investment across the state. Sans the prep funding, you look at what the legislature is doing just on regular appropriations, it's quite transformational for the system. So I wanted to mention that tidbit there. This is the airport construction program. It's a programming document. We're not obligating all these projects over 5 years to go actually get granted and spent. In fact, if you look in the ACP document that we publicize to the world, it says that. This is not a guarantee of funding. This is simply a commitment to add the project to the program. So I just wanted to add that little clarification.
Thank you.
I think we're impressed by the volume and the number of projects. It's a substantial increase.
We've not had this kind of
Thank
money
you.
before.
Yeah.
I feel the increase.
We're used to pennies and we're throwing around dollars here, so this is cool.
All right, I'm going to entertain a motion, and this would be for the 24-28 ACP program.
I move for approval.
Second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
But-
Yep.
Discussion.
Go ahead.
Just one more thing, just for Commissioner Hunter, if you could put these on a year-by-year.
Certainly,
You could
and,
provide that.
I know you
summary-
guys are doing your job.
I know,
And
and
you
I-
would
I
never
get-
bring
I get
anything
the-
that,
You're more than fine.
but we're
gonna-
not doing our job if we don't.
We're not going to
100%.
vote
No
on
worries.
these. This is not approving any
No,
project today.
That's the checks
Right.
and
I
balances.
get it, but just for his, if you could. put those
Absolutely.
out.
And one
That's
thing to note, on the end of that ACP, we do have the summary documents. What that won't include are those variables, though. So, but you can see the commission share broken out year by year at the end of that document, and then we try to do that. You know, it's basically, that's the sheet that I use in my normal day-to-day anyway.
I want to
So-
see a cash flow projection.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
It'd be simple.
Yeah, so it's
really-
marrying that with the other data that we don't have currently on there. Absolutely.
I'm old school. Thanks.
More
So
than
you're
fine.
taking the IOU for that.
Certainly.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Potter.
Aye.
Commissioner Ortega.
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey.
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
You're having such a good time, you get to stay up.
You're stuck with me, Madam Chair. So for item 9 here, we're actually kind of seeing the full ACP process play out in these items, to be honest with you. So from the last one, obviously, we approved an ACP. This one, we're moving on in that, set to the next portion of a project typically. So this would be the design phase of the project. This is not to grant the full portion of the project. It's just to ensure that we're demonstrating to our airport partners that we're in lockstep with them throughout every portion of the project. Typically, we used to, in the past, could just combine all the grant into one there at the end and do that all at once. But since there is always that small possibility that something pops up, some unforeseen circumstances where bid prices are just so extremely high they can't move forward with it, we didn't want the sponsors to be stuck with that full cost of the design phase of a project and then be out that money without a project to show for it. So that's why we started doing these over the past couple years. Just wanted to reiterate that, since I think it's been a day or two since we've had one of these. The first item here is at Boise City Airport. This is a project to construct a 10-unit T-hangar facility, so this will be the design phase of that project. That'll be able to get their plans and specs and everything ready to go to bid. So the project, anticipated design phase project cost of this is $70,700. This will be with our normal 40% grants on the $28,280 of state grant funds and $42,420 of sponsor matching funds for this project. And I believe the estimated cost on the total project of this estimated in the $800,000 to $1 million range. It's kind of been variable on those here lately. The second item here for design phase approval is at OU's Max Westheimer Airport. They are seeking to construct a 100 by 150 box hangar. I know there's been some talk of narrowing that down to 100 by 100, but I'm going to keep being hopeful and hopes they'll swing for the fences on that one. But this will be for the design phase of the hangar as well as the associated utility infrastructure to the hangar site. And so the estimated cost of this is for the design phase of the project is $231,058. There is a mistake there on the agenda, I believe. So I think the state fund grants and the sponsor matching fund grants on the agenda were switched. But the OAC's portion of that will be the standard 40% at $92,423. And the sponsors matching funds at $138,634 and some change. I will also note that the utilities that we're looking to bring over not only to serve this hangar, but it's also intended to open up another 24 acres of development area on the southeast side of the airport. Total project cost at this point in time, looking to be somewhere in the $5 million range for the project here. And that's, again, for the overall project here, this being just for the design phase at $231,000. Staff recommends approval. I stand for any questions.
Questions on either A or B? And I will entertain a motion. Remember, this is a consent docket, so you can vote for both or one or the other if you have issues.
Motion to approve.
Vote.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Potter.
Aye.
Commissioner Ortega.
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey.
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thank you.
And Nick, you're going to take Ben's part today?
Yes, Madam Chair, I will sub in for Ben on this one. Ben and Kelly do apologize. They had to run off to a construction site to do an inspection. They got a call this morning and had to hop in the car and go. So they send their regards, but I told Ben that I would sub in for him. So this is to seek a full grant approval for two of our projects. The first one being a fuel project at Broken Bow Municipal Airport for a total project cost of $506,934. And our portion of this, based off of the rules we recently passed in order to be able to partner in some of these fuel projects, is a 50-50 split. So we're looking to partner with them at $253,467 on their new 100 low-lead self-serve fuel. I believe that one is a 6,000 gallon tank for them down there. And the second one is going to be at Clarence E. Page Municipal Airport in Yukon, Oklahoma. Oh, I do apologize. I forgot that we actually received a letter from Vicki Patterson, the city manager of Broken Bow, and I'd be remiss if I didn't read that for you. Dear Director, Arties, and Commissioners, the City of Broken Bow would like to thank each one of you for your consideration of the proposed grant for a fuel system at our airport. Your support over the years has helped our airport grow, and the economic impact of it has the economic impact it has on our airport and our community is a blessing. We really appreciate each of you, and that's from Vicki Patterson, the city manager. And the second project is at CE Page. This is for their, I think they got about a 12,000 gallon fuel system they're looking to put in out there. Total project cost for this one is $735,444. And the commission share of that will basically, we're looking to do half of a 50-50 split between what the gap was between their FAA funds and their other funding. So that's kind of that's why this one looks a little bit different than what we've seen in other places, but they are utilizing as much of their FAA funding for this as they're able. And so for these two fuel projects, staff recommends approval, and I stand for any questions.
That's just 100 low lead, that's not Jet A.
Right.
Okay.
How long is the runway there?
Pardon?
Oh, never mind. This is
Yukon?
No, this is on page, I was going back to, the previous one,
Broken bow.
Broken Bow.
Broken Bow, they're about 3,000. Is it 3,200 or 3,000?
I believe it's just shy of 32. I think it's 31 and some change.
Gotcha.
Any other questions, comments? I'll entertain a motion.
I don't know how long the page is.
Move to approve.
Here, a second.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ortega,
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thanks, Nick. Director will come back.
Give Nick a reprieve for a minute. Let him get a drink of water and sit down. Item number 11 before you is a prep fund project. We thought about maybe including this just as a part of the grant program, but given it's prep funds, it's a prep fund grant, we wanted to break it out. And so this is kind of the way we're going to do this. If it's a specific prep fund project, we're going to break it out separate from the item for our traditional airport construction program grant. So with the adding of the Tulsa International Airport Tower to the ACP, we are now bringing before you a grant for the Tulsa Tower. This is for the design phase of that tower. Estimated cost is $3.6 million, just a shade over that. And obviously, given the prep funds are 100% funding, will be funded 100% by the prep funds. Staff recommends approval, and I will stand for any questions. And Alexis, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ortega,
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thank you.
Item 12, agreement for engineering services. Nick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item is actually very similar to the last one, but since we are acting as agent for Clinton Sherman, we are seeking not a grant, but to enter into a task order agreement with the engineer of record at the airport for the purpose of developing a terminal area plan. Estimated cost is $45,000. This will be covered by the prep funds that were allocated to the site. And the goal of the project is to provide separation of the varying types of aircraft that utilize the facility, especially as they have some bigger activity going on the south apron. They're going to also be looking at how to facilitate the expansion down there that's works for basically making sure that they're the ones that understand what the layout that works best for the airport, and not letting the not getting ahead of ourselves as folks look to expand out there. We want to make sure that they utilize the land that they have available to them and maximize its potential, rather than just going with whatever works best because that's the next thing that's available. So this will help give us a long-term path of where to start building out some of those facilities, both for the bigger commercial type items and MRO type of things there on the south, as well as looking for some GA areas up there on the north, given their interesting mix of aircraft that they have that utilize out there. So staff recommends approval. I stand for any questions.
Isn't Clinton Sherman an auxiliary for Altus?
Yes.
So they have C-17s, KC-135s, KC-46s shooting approaches
Yes, sir.
and landing.
Yes.
Are they going to use the apron out there too?
Well,
Are they now?
we're trying to address some of those things so that they feel more comfortable utilizing the apron.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Commissioner Ortega,
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thank you.
Item 13, prep fund update.
We've already discussed the Tulsa Tower enough, so we'll skip that. But several other of our prep funds, the four, if you'll remember, 4 mega projects that are coming through us. One other mega aviation project, which was part of Clinton Sherman that Nick Young just visited about. But the first one is Ardmore and their cargo facility that they're trying to develop down there. We've had several conversations with Ardmore in the last handful of weeks. They're finalizing the plan that you all had previously approved for expenditures and is also finishing up the design on the first phase of what they plan to spend their prep money on, and that is the taxiway Echo. So you heard in the construction program, phase 2 of taxiway Echo. Phase 1 of taxiway Echo is going to be a combination of existing FAA discretionary dollars, and then they're going to use those prep monies to widen it out to 75 feet to get the full width that they need to anticipate the 767 and under cargo traffic that they are trying to get. I would expect that that design is going to be done here in the next month or so. They'll advertise for bids, and they'll probably come to us with a request for a grant approval sometime, probably at the July meeting, but maybe a late summer meeting as well. The Will Rogers World Airport, they received prep funding for an MRO hangar, as you all will remember. It is currently in design by FSB at this point in time. That is a contract that AAR has and is entered into with FSB to undertake that design. They are also designing a fuel line relocation, so the fuel for the Will Rogers World Airport comes into the main fuel farm. You'll see if you go into Will Rogers, it'll be on your right side as you're coming into the terminal area. That fuel line, which is, I believe, a Phillips 66 line, comes in there and needs to be relocated because the hangar would be built on top of it. I think we will be breaking ground on that hopefully late summer, early fall on the fuel line, and then obviously the hangars to come shortly thereafter. Woodward is probably the least far along of all the communities, but they are making progress on the design of their terminal building, which is the first thing that they would like to spend their prep money on. They also have some goals and desires for a runway extension, taxi lane development, hangar construction. They are looking at maybe trying to get a flight school to come in there, as well as several MRO businesses for the northwest Oklahoma area. The other prep funds, of course, we're keeping you up to date on the hangars, the $14 million of competitive hangars, and you all have approved the slate of programming for where that $14 million should go. And as we get those designs done and bids received, we will come back to you for grant approval on those hangars. And then last but not least, we have our $4 million for commercial air service, and I've spoken with Alexis and Jeff Mulder at Oklahoma City, and they're trying to come up with some ideas for what they would like to try and spend the direct route subsidies on, what route they're hoping to achieve. So with that being said, that stands for my prep update, and as always, we will continue to update you and keep you updated on how these prep funds are being spent. Obviously, this $100 million is a one-time deal, and we want to be able to take advantage of it for the benefit of aviation aerospace. And who knows, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, maybe there'll be another round of prep. We want to be able to show that we were good stewards and spent this money as quickly as we can and get this in the ground and infrastructure as expeditiously as possible. That being said, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay. Item 14, if you remember, Director Artie said he wished for a clone to Paula. This would have come in handy because unfortunately
it would have come in handy
she's under
today.
the weather today, so we're going to defer item 14 till July.
So item 15 is the Oklahoma Aero Foundation. As we came to you earlier this year with this idea, there are several other state agencies that have foundations that benefit them for mostly fundraising and being able to receive charitable contributions. They can help for anything from scholarships to putting on events. Our goal here is to have this foundation help us put on events, things like Women in Aviation Day, Aero Day at the Capitol, Student Pilot Day, the AOPA teacher training that we have coming up here in a month or so. And so with the goal of that foundation, we had sought trying to get some outside counsel services. The Attorney General's office decided that our own John Settle, who's over here, can do it just as well. And so John's been working with us for the last probably month or so, trying to get some of the prerequisites put together for how we can start the foundation process. Talking to staff, coming up with a fancy name, fancy title. Sometimes it's back to basics. So what we are proposing is to move forward with the foundation and incorporation of a nonprofit tax-exempt foundation, 501c3 foundation for the benefit of aviation aerospace in the state. We are recommending the name of this foundation be the Oklahoma Aero Foundation. Aero is not an acronym, although we may leave it to Sandra. She may make it an acronym sooner or later. But what we are looking to do in this initial stage is have 5 members of the foundation. Obviously, that can grow, but wanted to have a minimum of 5. One commission member sitting on the foundation is kind of the liaison between the two. This is obviously a foundation that you, as the commission, are, at the end of the day, standing up and then entrusting this to board members. But we also don't want to simply separate those two entities. We still want to be able to have some internal controls in case something were to ever happen in the future. So there are 3 incorporators that would be looking to stand this up. Cody Holcomb from Ada, Oklahoma. Cody is a city manager currently, but an aviation enthusiast. He's been in the airport consulting world before. He is all things aviation aerospace and has been a big part of what's going on down there with the AOPA program over the last 4, 5, 6 years. Lindy Ritz, who is our current chair, and she will be the commission member that is the liaison from the commission to the foundation. And then Joy Sager from Oklahoma City, who is very involved in the aviation aerospace industry, has a couple aircraft and sits on a lot of aviation boards and does a lot of things for the greater aviation industry here in Oklahoma. Those are the incorporators that we are recommending. Of course, those incorporators are recommended to become board members as well. In addition to those 3 individuals, we are recommending Jerry Barrientos from Tulsa, as well as Greg Sven Smith, Sven being his call sign. He was an Air Force guy from Midwest City. He is also the site head of Northrop Grumman currently. Jerry Barrientos in Tulsa has been very instrumental in helping us with Women in Aviation Day activities. She has her own financial advising service in Tulsa, has several airplanes, and pretty much is at every aviation event that I can think of in the Tulsa area or even the entire state of Oklahoma. So with that being said, this is the next step. If you all were to approve this, this allows us to move into the incorporation stage, submit documentation to the Secretary of State's office for the incorporation of this foundation, as well as to the Internal Revenue Service requesting our 501c3 status. I would suspect that we will be coming back to you for other approvals as the year goes on, but this is the next step that we need to do in the process as advised by our council. John, anything else that I may have missed?
No, I guess my plan would be to have this, at least the paperwork put together so that the commission could review it by the next board meeting.
Okay. And there you have it, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I stand and recommend, gladly recommend this as an option. I think it's a long overdue initiative of the agency, and I think it will provide some significant fruits and benefits and growth opportunities for things like our aviation aerospace education program and all the events that we do throughout the year, and maybe even grow some events into some new areas that we haven't been in before.
Questions, comments?
Where will the funds for this nonprofit, where are they envision coming from?
Well, we hope to have a lot of donators to this foundation, as with any 501c3. Fundraising, you know, we already fundraise a significant amount of money as the agency for things like Women in Aviation Day, Aero Day at the Capitol, Student Pilot Day. Those funds are routed through existing foundations that we have are considered friends, whether it's the Air Force Association, the Oklahoma Airport Operators Association, the Oklahoma Pilots Association. And so this is, not only is this simply to reroute that to our own foundation, but it's also an instrumentality of efficiency, being able to have that foundation for us that we can raise those funds. Because it is a little interesting that as Sandra and I maybe go around and raise funds, we say, can you donate to XYZ event? And oh, by the way, you need to give it to these folks. And then we got to make sure that they cut the check to those folks and don't send the check to us. And it can be kind of cumbersome at the end of the day. And so that's where a majority of our fundraising is going to come from.
So they're going to step into that role?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
They're going to step into that role. And we will still, at this point in time, we as staff will take off our agency hat and put on a foundation hat and work as that. Now, if you look at Wildlife Foundation, they did that for about 4, 5, 6 years, and then eventually got big enough in terms of their fundraising that they're able to hire a separate person for the foundation. I don't suspect that we're going to get there anytime soon, but you never know. We may have the success that Wildlife did in 5, 6, 7 years from now. We may be in that same spot. But for right now, it's just going to be simply an instrumentality of what we're trying to do.
I actually suggested this about 6 years ago. And
As I was
discussed it
alluding
at
to my
length
comment about long
with
overdue.
Vic, and I'm glad to see it come to fruition.
Thank you.
Would you like to make a motion?
I will make that motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Potter.
Aye.
Commissioner Ortega.
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz.
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners. You know what they say,
Partnership with-
Commissioner Hunter, better late than never, right?
It took you long enough.
You're paying attention. You're paying attention.
I'll blame that on someone else since I wasn't in charge back then.
Predecessor?
Yeah. I still get to do that, right? I get that for about 3 years. I get
You
that
only-
3-year
that only
window there?
goes so
Okay.
far.
Yeah.
Okay. Item number 16, the Aerospace States Association membership. This is something we've done in partnership with our Department of Commerce in the past. The member is the Lieutenant Governor, and so we help him pay the dues for the Aerospace States Association. They just reminded us that the dues were due as the ASA was at the Space Symposium, which the Department of Commerce and Craig Smith were at while we were at the MRO show a couple weeks ago. So staff recommends approval, splitting these dues. It's a $3,000 due. We're paying $1,500, but staff recommends approval for this partnership to pay the annual ASA membership dues.
And it's due when?
So these are, I think it's the same fiscal year we're on? Yeah, July 1 to June 30.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Motion to approve.
Do I hear a motion?
Yes, motion to approve.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Potter.
Aye.
Commissioner Ortega.
Aye.
Chairwoman Ritz.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey.
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Director, talk about aviation and
Well,
aerospace.
as Nick gave his best Ben impression, because they are out at an airport, we are a busy organization right now. You'll notice a few people missing. Sandra, who Michelle's doing her best impression of right now, and I'm going to give it a try, is at the Oklahoma Defense Industry Association Washington, D.C. fly-in right now. Well, actually, she's coming back right now at this point in time. But we have some amazing upcoming events. The AOPA teacher training is going to happen the first week of June, June 5th through the 8th at the University of Oklahoma in Norman. Our banquet is tentatively set for Tuesday, June 6th. I would encourage each one of you to come to that banquet. And of course, we'll send out formal invites as we get closer to that date. Tinker Air Show, July 1st and 2nd. I would encourage each one of you to come to that. We will have some tickets, some VIP tickets as part of our sponsorship to enter into the chalet area. But as you all know, that is our campaign. That is our biggest campaign to get people excited about the aviation aerospace industry. Last time we had this was in, I believe, 2019. And it was an amazing event. They had to close the gates both days because they ran out of capacity to park and just have people. So encourage you all to come if you're not already doing some kind of 4th of July vacation. Some of the trade shows that we have going on right now, AUVSI, which is ongoing, that's where Doug and Jace are at currently, in Denver, Colorado. Of course, Paris Air Show coming up in mid-June. The AAAE Airport Executive Association conference is coming up in Denver the first week of June. We'll have Nick and Thomas attending that. And then some of our local events on Saturday, May 22nd, we have the Watonga Fly-In Breakfast. I think Jen is here, looking forward to a good breakfast, or, sorry, El Reno? No, okay. No, I thought El Reno was on here for some reason. Watonga Fly-In Breakfast, May 22nd. Friday, June 9th, the B-29 dock is coming to TASM on September 22nd, 23rd. Bartlesville is having a fly-in. Looking forward to that, Commissioner. Chickasha Wings on June the 3rd. Chickasha Wings and Wheels is happening on June 3rd. And then September 23rd is Max Westheimer's Aviation Day that they have every single year. Let's see, what else do I have here? OPA, Oklahoma Pilots Association, first Thursday monthly dinner at the Wiley Post Airport at the C.E. Page building. They always encourage us to invite any aviator or just aviation enthusiast that wants to come to that dinner, and I try and make a couple of those a year. But that being said, that is the list of events that I have coming up. Of course, we'll talk about it in July, but we have Oshkosh. Recommend anybody that wants to come to Oshkosh this year, come to Oshkosh. We'll have our usual Saturday luncheon, but our keynote is going from Mr. Senator Jim Inhofe to Governor Kevin Stitt, and looking forward to all that fun that's going to happen this summer. I would encourage you to go use the Fly Oklahoma app and share that with your flying buddies to encourage them to go through some of the new features that we're going to roll out this summer, some of the new challenges that we might have, as well as just the regular passport program to go hit all the airports in Oklahoma. That being said, that concludes my Sanders Shelton upcoming aerospace and aviation events report.
Who's going to Paris?
I am, and I think Mr. Commissioner Phillips is, but anybody that wants to come is welcome to attend, and we'll try and get you coordinated.
Okay.
Concluding comments. Do you have any?
I do not. Just want to say thank you, and Commissioner, I know we hear you from time to time on the fiduciary responsibilities. We are planning on a kind of a 45-minute to hour-long study group working presentation at our July commission meeting, so that meeting may be a little longer than usual. We're going to bring in some of our engineers, engineering consultants, and they're going to talk about the ACP process, how projects developed, how projects bid, how it works with the FAA system, how it works with the state system, all those litany of things. So I think it's time. I think it's time for everybody to understand that we have some new faces on the commission, but time for individuals to realize here's all the things that we go through on a day-to-day and a week and a month and a yearly basis. And so we've got 3 very qualified presenters that are going to come talk to you about the Open Bidding Act, how a project's developed, how FAA deals with projects, so on and so forth. And so I would ask if you could maybe clear your calendars for an extra, might make it to noon or noon 30 instead of 11 or 11:30 meeting at our July meeting. So that's the only concluding remarks that I have. But looking forward to a good summer, and looking forward to seeing everybody out there at some airports and in the airspace.
Any other comments? Good job.
Thank you.
Mark your calendars. Next meeting is July the 18th. That's a Tuesday. And any new business, Director? All right. Hearing none, may I get a motion to adjourn?